Hello everyone, and welcome to the video where we're going to lay out some guidelines for what you need to do as far as writing your exploration paper. Before we get into this today, I want you to know that everything you see in this video is available on my Swift page right now, as well as quite a few examples of previous student work. So as we go through this stuff, the whole purpose of the video is just to give some extra explanations to what's going on, so you have the ability to get started with picking a topic, to get started with writing it, and we'll be able to have lots of conversations and ask lots of questions as we go. That's going to be one of the most important things. So keep that in mind as we go. You may want to have the Swift page up as we go through this so you can pull on the documents that I'm talking about. So here we are at the prompt. We need to write a math paper that demonstrates the application of skills and knowledge in a way that relates to a personal interest. I want you to really focus on the personal interest, and we'll get the math, but it's sort of misleading and it's very vague. The paper will have math in it, but it's not really as much a math paper as a chance for you to show applications. So really focus on the word applications. We're looking for something in the world that relates to some sort of math that we've learned. And so if you can find something that interests you, that you think, maybe there's some math in there, that's the kind of thing that we can have a conversation about and then try to figure out, well, what is the math of that? If I need to teach you some more math or teach you some connections or direct you to some other resources, those are things I'm really happy to do. When you write this paper, your audience is your classmates. So you want to write it in a level that they can understand. That means you have to explain everything. Explain all your steps, explain all your diagrams, explain all the connections. You can't leave anything out because your job is to demonstrate to the reader your understanding. As far as page length, IB is suggesting 6 to 12 pages, but there are no hard deadline or no hard guidelines on this. It's just that suggestion. If you're writing more than that, you're probably writing too much. And if you're writing less than 6 pages, you probably are not explaining things clearly enough. As far as formatting, there's no specific guideline on that either. I'd like you to do MLA or APA formatting. I would like it to be double spaced, size 11 or 12, professional, reasonable margins. And then you also need to include bibliography or works cited as well as in-text citations. That way, when I'm reading through it, if I want to check your sources, I can quickly figure out, okay, where did you get this information? Flip back to your biblio or your works cited, and then check your sources. The first submission of this paper is due on December 16th, and notice I'm not calling it a rough draft. You don't want to turn in a rough draft. It's worth 20% of your grade. Additionally, I'm only going to read your paper twice. I'll read it once after your first submission, and I'll read it once more when you make your final submission. That's the one that we send to IB. And the better paper you turn in on your first submission, the better my feedback will be to you, and you'll be able to get a much better final score. So make sure you're turning in a decent paper on December 16th. Here's the mark scheme. A perfect score is 20 marks. We really don't give out 20s. I think I've only maybe even seen one ever, heard of one ever. I have had students in the past get 17s, 18s, 19s. There are a couple of 17s posted on the Swift page, so you can go read those and see what it is that gets you a 17. But we have 5 criteria here. I'm going to break down each one of them and explain a little bit more because this document's a little bit vague, but I'll explain all of those and what we're looking for. Okay, so what we're looking for with communication, according to this, is we want an exploration paper that's coherent, organized, concise, and complete. Well, what does that mean? In order to do that, you're going to have an introduction to your paper in which you give a rationale, the reasoning for why you've picked this topic, the aim, which is what you're going to be trying to accomplish in the paper, and kind of give us a roadmap for it. Write a good conclusion. We want the paper to read well and be easy to follow, but there's nothing here that says if you have spelling errors, or minor grammar mistakes, we're not going to mark you down for that. This is an English class. So what we want to see is that it's really, really clear what you're trying to communicate, and that it's complete, meaning that all steps are explained. You've demonstrated really, really good understanding of your mathematics. Criterion B, math representations, is something that everybody should do really well on. What we're looking for here, we want to see that your notation is proper notation. That's one of the reasons that I'm asking you to use Microsoft Word to do this, because that makes it really, really easy. We don't want to see weird notation. Like, I don't want to see 1/3 for a fraction. It should actually look like a fraction. You shouldn't have an X for multiplication unless it happens to be relevant to your exploration, and then you'd need to explain that for criterion A. If it's appropriate to have graphs to express yourself, then you need to put in graphs. You need to label the axes. things like that. So as much different representation as is appropriate, you are expected to show all of that and to have it be neat and clean as if it were a textbook. The things we look for on Criterion C, personal engagement, we want to see that you're thinking and working independently. Maybe you've thought creatively that you're addressing something that's of personal interest to you. Maybe it's something that you could then use in the future to help the way you understand that part of the world. We want to see that you're presenting your mathematical ideas in your own ways, that you're asking questions, making conjectures, and investigating something that relates to math, and specifically math in the syllabus. We want to see that you've created models for real world situations. That's the easiest way to do these papers oftentimes, is to come up with some sort of a model for something real, and to explore something unfamiliar. This one you really have to explain as you go, and you have to make sure that you've made it really, really clear in your writing that you're doing those things. A lot of times people, when they write their paper, they don't make it explicit what their engagement is. Make it really clear. Maybe you're collecting your own data, or you're going out and observing something to try to create a model, or talk about the process you used to generate the model, and that'll help you score better on C. Criterion D reflection is often the criterion that a lot of students struggle with. It's not very hard, but for some reason, a lot of people don't do it. So I do want to make it really clear what we're looking for. One of the biggest things that you can do to get reflection is that you can talk about the implications of your results. So you have some exploration that you're doing. If it could never really be applied this way, maybe you didn't consider all the variables because that would require too much math. Talk about that. What's really boring is if your paper says, well, here's my math, and therefore this is going to cure cancer, and I deserve the Nobel Prize right now. I mean, you might cure cancer in your paper, and if you do, that's great. But if it's not that powerful a result, be clear about that. It's often good right before your conclusion paragraph to have a reflection paragraph where you explicitly address these things. Talk about the variables you didn't use. How significant are your findings and results? Are they accurate? Were there things in your exploration that led to you not being able to have really accurate or precise results? If that happened, that's okay. You can talk about why that happened. Maybe you didn't have access to the tools you needed. You can talk about, if I wanted to make this better, here's what would need to happen. You're reflecting then on what your process was and what you did, and that'll basically demonstrate more understanding that you have. Another way you can have really good reflection is if you can link this to other content areas of school or other ways the math could be used. So maybe your exploration is on physics, but you could talk about how it could be used in chemistry and psychology. And that's not what your exploration was, but if you can demonstrate that you can understand those connections, that's very, very good for your reflection score. And finally, everyone's favorite criterion, Criterion E, the use of math. This is where I look at your math and we figure out how much math did you use, how accurate was it, how well do you understand it. So take a minute and read through these and notice the differences. For a 2, you're using some relevant math, and the big thing that gets people down at a 2 is they don't demonstrate their understanding. Maybe they even have understanding, but if your paper doesn't demonstrate the understanding, we can't give you a very good score on this. And notice this is 6 marks. It's worth more than any of the other criteria. So obviously it's something that's really important. To get a 6, you have to have thorough knowledge and understanding. It's pretty hard to do that, but you could definitely get a 4. You could demonstrate some knowledge and understanding, or a 5 where you demonstrate good knowledge and understanding. You could do that. One thing that I want to be really clear about, though, is we're told that if your mathematics is not commensurate with the level of the course, meaning you're using math that's only Algebra 3-4 level, or you're only just barely doing something that's in our IB syllabus, then the highest you can get on this criterion is a 2. So make sure you go into the subject guide document on the Swift page and look through the syllabus as you're figuring out what it is you want to work on. And that's what I'm going to have in the back of my head as I'm helping you pick a topic and I'm verifying your topic. I'm going to want to make sure it relates to some IB math, because if it doesn't, it's absolutely going to kill you. The other thing that I want you to notice here is it's about demonstrating your understanding, which means it's actually really related to Criterion A with communication. So if you don't explain stuff, you get dinged in Criterion A and in Criterion E. So you really have to explain everything and really focus on that word demonstrate. You're demonstrating that you understand this. That's one of the reasons why IB started having students write the paper, is for people who are, they have test anxiety or have trouble with that. This is an opportunity to demonstrate your understanding of something in the syllabus and how it relates to the world. So make sure you're really, really intentional about that. What I want to do here is give you some final tips on how to do this. You have to pick a good topic. If you don't have a good topic, you're never going to be able to write a good paper. And I can help you figure that out. We need to have lots of conversations. You do with me specifically, one on one, try to figure out what a good topic is going to be for you. If you have a good topic, the paper is really easy to write. Truly, this is the hardest part of the whole exercise is figuring out your topic. Once you got it, it's not that big a deal. So we really need to put in the work and figure that out. As you're working on your math and as you're working on your paper, you need to get feedback from me as you go. I'm not going to read your paper, but I will talk to you about your math. And if you have ideas about how to format things or how to explain this or that, I'm totally happy to have those conversations. The people who write their paper without getting any help from me typically don't do very well. They're down around 10 points, even single digit scores. And that is not what we want. So I'm totally happy to meet with you in seminar or after school or to have an email correspondence with you and give you some feedback and some support as you work on this because it is a really challenging paper. I understand that. And so part of my role is to help. IB is really clear to the teachers that there is no limit on how much we can help you. If you keep asking questions, we're allowed to keep answering them. So we want to do that. I want to reiterate that I'm only going to read your paper twice. I'll talk to you about it as much as you want, but I'm not taking them home and reading them every single weekend. I'm only going to read them twice. And IB is really clear. We're only supposed to respond with written feedback one time. And so I'll be doing that after your December submission. And then finally, guys, you got to use Microsoft Word. The biggest reason for that is it just has the best formatting for the math for Criterion B. For whatever reason, Google and Apple seem to be behind the eight ball on this one. And people found last time that I did this, they would get in trouble because their stuff wouldn't be formatted right. So their paper would be totally fine, but they'd lose 3 points on that one criterion. And when you're talking 3 points out of 20 that you're not getting, it really hurts your score. So do write it in Microsoft Word. Have me check your formatting on your math before you submit it because those are so easy to fix if you have a problem. All right, so now it's time. Go ahead and jump on the Swift page. It's time to go read some examples and kind of get the ball rolling a little bit with that. So go read some of those. If you have questions about those, we can talk about them. But I want to see that you're taking some time to look through some examples and get some ideas of your own.